In any city, in any country, go to any mental institution or halfway house you can get yourself to. When you reach the front desk, ask to visit someone who calls himself the holder of youth. The attendant will choke back a childish giggle and rise from her seat, motioning for you to follow. Do so, but do not show any emotion other than annoyance, for there are creatures watching you, waiting for a chance to erase your mind and make you do their foul bidding. The attendant will lead you through the facility, skipping merrily along and turning down hallways at a whim. Do not bother trying to remember the path, for it will soon be irrelevant. After what will feel like hours of walking, she will turn into an empty room and halt abruptly, announcing that you have arrived. Follow her in and shut the door firmly, then move aside. She will wait, rocking gingerly on her heels, then bounce towards the door, opening it with little more than a grin. Through the door, there will be a lush meadow, teeming with vibrancy and life. Follow your guide through the frame and stop when she does. She will then glance around nervously and lean towards you with apprehension in her eyes. She will speak a single, whimsical word, then depart, leaving through the door and closing it. You must make sure to not forget that word. Walk forward with rigid, stoic paces, keeping an angry visage upon your features. The guardians here know you do not belong, but will be too afraid to strike. For now. Continue walking until you reach a ring of flowers and step inside it. They will all wilt suddenly, with the exception of one small portion. Go in that direction, and that direction only, for 44 paces. Then stop, turn to your right, and walk another 44 paces. When you stop for a second time, turn completely around. You should be in a dense, verdant forest. If you are not, then the guardians have mustered their courage, and no power in this place will try to save you. When you arrive, immediately take 3 steps backward. You should come to rest against a large tree. Vines and branches will snake over your body and hold you there, but do not struggle. No matter how tightly they constrict, you must not show your pain, but keep glaring forward, lest the tree decide to crush you on itself. When the growth stops, several children will burst from the bushes, laughing and playing, oblivious to your presence, and form a ring around the tree. As they begin to dance around it, they will sing in pleasant voices, a silly children's song, making the trees around them shudder with laughter. Whatever you do, do not speak or soften your face, but wait until the children pause and sit to catch their breath. One of them will finally notice you and ask what you are doing there. Tell them that you wish to see Father, and they will gasp as one. Should they begin to giggle, then your death will arrive soon, by creatures which no words could ever describe. Sternly tell them again that you wish to speak with Father, and their leader will hang his head glumly, muttering acquaintances to you. He will stand and walk away, leaving all the others around you. They will begin to speak to themselves and you, but you must not look at them, listen to them, or even think about anything they might say to you. They only seek to break your stoic mask and flee their punishment. If their words should ever cease, then growl at them, stop pouting about it, and enjoy yourselves. You must sound as menacing as possible, and they will resume talking. No one knows what happens if they remain silent. When the other child finally arrives, he will sit back down, and a tall, wizened figure will emerge from the thicket. He will stare at you, a gaunt, annoyed face that should match your own, and demand to know why you came here of all places. Glare at him and ask, "Does it truly matter?" The figure will sigh darkly, and begin a long-winded rant about the follies of youth. Stay silent, for he will not take kindly to interruptions. When he finally winds down, he will ask again why you are here. Ask him, what were they before this? The old man's eyes will flash with understanding, and he will sit on a nearby stone and begin to speak. He will tell you in every possible detail what they were in a time before time, when there was still a shred of goodness within what they kept. He will explain, with a heavy voice, the calmer times, and tell you of the events that sparked their fall. Every slight, every delusion, every crushed dream will be laid bare by his words. As the old man speaks, the lush green around you will give way to blackened, dead soil, rotting trees, and foul, half-rotting vegetation. Do not change your expression, and hold your gaze on the old man. The story will end with, see what they have done to my children. The small figures that sat around you will now be festering corpses, all eyeing you with gleams of sadness in their putrescent faces, begging for release. They will all stand and trot toward you, with their father telling you that their hunger must be sated. Now, in your loudest voice, scream the word you were told when you arrived. Should you have forgotten or mispronounce it in any way, then you will spend the rest of eternity as the dead children's meal. Speak it correctly, and they should all fall to the ground, clutching their ears shut, and the constricting briars from the tree will shatter. Take the largest piece of wood that you can find, run toward the old man, and stab him in the neck with it. As he chokes on his own blood, he will hold a single rose aloft. Take it from his hand, as darkness will surround you, forcing you to choke and die like him. When your lungs feel as though they shall burst, you will find yourself at the door to the place you call home, gasping for air and clutching the flower in your clammy hand. That rose is object 87 of 538, Forlorn Remembrance. It stands for the purity that once was and never shall be again.
Sight can always be very elusive. It can trick the mind into believing that something is somewhere when it is somewhere else, or when it doesn't even exist. It can provide unnatural illusions and hallucinations to weird out the beholder. But I can tell you right now, this isn't the case. I'm not insane. I'm not dreaming. My mind is not fucked. This is real. I swear to you, it's real. I can't stress how much this has ached me. I can't think straight. That thing, it follows me everywhere. It's in the trees, the bushes, the beds, the dresses, the TVs, the fields, the chairs, the minds, the eyes, everywhere. I don't know how to go about it. Well, I'm starting to ramble about knowledge unknown. Let me introduce myself. My name is Ryder. I live in Arizona, a very secluded part. Large house, lots of fields. We have farm animals. I've never been the farming type of kid. I was born in Seattle, raised until 5, then abandoned by my mother. My father raised me and my brother with care, taught us new things that my mother hadn't known. We had very good internet. We were a technological family. We knew the ups and downs of everything. I am now 17, my brother 15. Nobody else knows about this. Nobody. A few weeks ago, I was out late, checking on all of the animals. A flashlight in hand, my pyjamas on. I was just about ready for bed. A breath just flew around my entire body. Just a giant air wave. It didn't feel like it came from the sky, but from an actual living organism. It knew I was there. It had watched me for quite some time. I would catch it in a glimpse, but never enough to draw conclusions. As I felt that breath, I made a complete 360 turn, inspecting everything around me, and when I saw nothing, I fled to the house. I buried myself under the covers, and as I gasp for air, I feel a finger rush from my lower back to my neck. And with the softest, most melodic voice I have ever heard in my life, it whispers, "Our secret is kept dear, for I was never here." And it is gone. I snap to reality. I'm outside. I'm in the same spot I was before. What the hell just happened? Without thought, I take a 360 turn, inspecting everywhere. I spot something. I stop my turn and look closer. I see the back of someone. I check it out, and I bring my eyes upon the head. It's abnormal. Its size is much larger than my own. My vision becomes much clearer, and I see the creature. With a flashlight in hand, my pajamas on, just about ready for bed, it turns its head towards me without moving its body. With its mouth, it slowly mouths the words, while the sounds are right in my eardrums, as if there are two of them whispering right next to me. I've always been right here.
When I was little, my grandmother used to tell me to beware the button man. I can still hear her croaky old voice, forbidding me from smiling at the button man. She was always warning me not to stay out when it was dark and to go to bed on time, or else I ran the risk of a visitation from the button man. I never knew what she meant or who the button man was. I just presumed he was some made-up boogeyman conjured to frighten kids living in the northeast of England. I mean, there's not much that would frighten a kid brought up on an estate, but the button man came close. She even had a poem for him. It went something like, "Beware the button man and his button smile. If you grin at him, he may stay a while." Anyway, she died last week, and when I was sorting through her stuff, I found a ton of old junk. You know, the sort of stuff you'd imagine finding in the hoard of an 87-year-old. But one thing really stuck out. In an old oak box was this collection of drawings, the paper all yellowed. There were other things in there too, but the drawings are what really stood out. They were kids' drawings, crayons, scribbled stick figures, standing by a simplistic square house. The characters in the scenes were labelled as well, like all kids do. There was Mum, Dad, me, and Buttons. A shiver went up my spine reading that, and instantly I remembered another of my grandma's poems. "Beware the button man, be back before your tea. For if you stay out too late, his button eyes you'll see." Most people wouldn't understand why a drawing had such an effect, but if you'd seen it, you'd understand that despite everything seeming like any normal childish doodle, the towering, tall, dark figure labelled Buttons was different. Unlike the others, Buttons was scribbled in black, with a smile of navy dots and, most disturbingly, inhumanly extended arms. In the first few drawings, the towering Buttons figure is small and distant, standing atop a hill, but the other drawings show him getting closer. The small girl labelled me being drawn with a sad face on the sheet that had Buttons standing behind her. If you're disturbed, then I don't blame you. I was. So much so that I took the drawings to my mum, who thought they were sweet, a call back to simpler times. When asked who Buttons was, she said he was her imaginary friend, that he stole buttons from her clothes and lived beneath her bed. Terrifying to most, I'm sure, but my mother was still dazzled by the trip down memory lane. Her nostalgia blinded her to the absolute creepiness of everything she had just told me. That all changed when she looked at one of the drawings, though. I could see in her face something wasn't right. Her eyes swelled with worry and a cold sweat began to run down her head. In all the years of my life, not once had I seen my mother look so concerned, troubled, maybe even fearful. "What is it?" I asked, but she said nothing, just claiming that she felt a little unwell. When I looked at the drawing that had caused my mum to become so unnerved, I saw nothing exceptionally abnormal. Then I spotted it. A small stick figure, standing by the little girl labelled me, who I now presumed was my mother. The small character who was absent from the other drawings was labelled Iris. I asked my mother who the little stick figure was, and despite her reluctance, she eventually answered. "It's my sister," she said. "Your auntie, Iris." I'm not sure if it was confusion or disbelief that I felt when she said that, but I struggled to find a reply. This was the first time I had ever heard of having an auntie. "How come I've never met her?" I asked, not ready for the answer that followed. "She died," Mum said in a low, trembling voice. I asked what happened, but my mum refused to tell me. She just said something awful and begged me to never speak of Iris or the drawings again. Being a total mummy's girl, I didn't think twice. I agreed to never speak of it again, but that did not stop my curiosity, desiring to know more about this mysterious auntie of mine. So I did what any ordinary millennial does. I googled her, scoured the internet, but found nothing. I typed in the button man and the same again, nothing. So I returned to where this whole mystery began, my grandmother's attic hoard. I hoped to cleave something, some shred of information about my auntie, an article or a diary perhaps, something. What I found was a pink notebook wedged behind some old frames. The notepad was cheap looking and it had stick-on flowers glued to the front cover. The book was clearly my mother's, as it had her name written on the back. It must have been hers when she was a lot older, as it was full of poems. They weren't literary masterpieces by any means, but the poems were written well enough to not be the work of a crayon drawing child. Reading on one of the poems, my heart sank, and a terrible sense of dread fell upon me. This is what the poem said. "Beware the button man, who lives beneath the bed. If you speak his name, you'll surely end up dead. But if you know his secret, then all you have to do is give him someone else, so he does not take you." My heart sank reading that line. What kind of children's poem was this? Who would ever tell kids such a thing? Why would my mum write these? Those are just a handful of the questions that troubled my thoughts. Then, as if by chance, a slip of paper fell from between the pages of poetry. With anticipation for what this new clue might unveil, I reached down and plucked the folded square up. In my fingers the sheet unravelled, and though old and rigid, the paper appeared to have stood the test of time. My blood ran cold as I looked upon the simplistic drawing of a family and a girl's imaginary friend. For unlike all the others, this one showed Buttons, standing in the distance, with a sack dotted and dripping in red, cast over his shoulder. But what is most disturbing is the girly stick figure labelled Iris was gone, and the stick figure drawing of my mum was waving Buttons off.
In any city, in any country, go to any mental institution or halfway house you can get yourself to. When you reach the front desk, ask the receptionist if you can see the one who calls herself the holder of pain. The receptionist will say that he has no idea who you speak of, but will slide a card across the desk to you with a room number on it. Take the card while replying apologetically, "I must be in the wrong place then," and ascend the stairs that may or may not have been there before. As you wander the upcoming halls in search of her room, you will hear the most beautiful singing you have ever heard. Should the singing ever stop, whisper, "Please continue, it's beautiful." However, the return of the singing is the last thing you want. If it does, you may calmly leave the building and tell your loved ones goodbye. You will be dead by morning. Should the silence persist, continue to the room shown on the card. Quietly enter it. An average-looking blonde-haired woman wearing glasses will be sitting in the centre of the bare room with her back turned to you. A pool of blood will have collected at her feet. Approach her and embrace her. Mind yourself, though. The closer you get to her, the more pain and despair you will feel wash over you. You must continue in spite of this, lest you weep yourself to death. Hold on to her until she begins to cry, and ask her, where does their pain come from? She will smile weakly and respond, their love. She will then hold out her hand, and you will notice a ring on her finger. Delicately take the ring from her finger, kiss the back of her hand, and leave. The ring is object 212-538. Only you will see that the most painful thing in the world can be love.
The mind. The hollow void of your skull and electricity that keeps you alive, based on ever-changing but firm instincts. The very mass that is you. Your consciousness all in one small, fragile pack of tissue. But as we know, electricity can be manipulated. You can be manipulated. Everything you know, say, think, and do is all electricity. Like an overgrowing photography collection, everything passes through the brain to be confirmed and then remembered. As an old saying goes, you forget 1,000 things every day. So if the brain was such a good firewall, why would you still see shapes in the middle of the night? Eerie noises haunting you, only to be confirmed as something else. Well, it is simple. Why are humans afraid of snakes, storms, and war? We learned our lesson. We found that these things kill us, and we should stay far away from any source of these events. So as for these shapes, we learned our lesson. We found that these things can also kill us, just as the previous threats. What phobia is pulling the threads, telling your brain to be wary of something you are told you are making up? All the studies, all the facts, and yet you still fear your midnight hallucinations. It is less simple than many would like to prove, but can be summed up with one word: coexistence. Just because humans forgot these beings exist does not mean that they have not slaughtered us in the past. They certainly have not gone away. These stealthy beasts have taken kids who were declared missing. They look like anything they can copy. That is why human shapes and beast-like shapes both appear. You forget 1,000 things every day. Don't forget again.
(16:35:23) April 2051.
So, I fucked up hard. And, well, I'm fucked. Hang on, let me turn that off. I want to die in peace, for God's sake.
Low pressure alarm muted. Low O2 alarm muted.
Where was I? Oh yeah, so this is going to be my last, well, everything. Well, because of a fucking drill. Who knew that a drill could cause an astronaut to get flung towards the sun? It's ironic, really. I always loved the sun. That's why I was on the Solaris station for my research about the sun, as that's why the Solaris orbits the sun. So, I'm guessing when I transmit this, the CESE would want to know what the fuck actually happened. Well, guys, I was out on my spacewalk to do repair and do maintenance on a few solar cells on the starboard side of the Solaris. Like normal, I used the drill to unbolt a cell to repair it, and my tether must have got caught or something, because then I felt a thud through me. So something had to have shattered and flew towards my visor. My ears popped, so something must have gone fucking through. I can't remember anything else. My sun visor must be fucked, as I can feel my face has been burnt, and I can feel a blob of blood under my Snoopy cap. I have been turning myself away from the sun with the air coming out my glove, because, well, if I didn't, I would be blinder than the Canadian astronaut who went blind during a spacewalk from our history books.
O2 tank 11% remaining. Alarm active.
Fuck! Fuck! Fuckity fuck! Fuck!
Damage detected. Damage report. Left glove. Left arm. Suit breach detected. Damage 31%. Increasing backfill of N2. CO2 filter damaged. Damage report. Error unresponsive.
Bollocks. Had a fucking paddy and now fucked myself harder. Shit! Well, at least I can say I went down with a fight. With my spacesuit. I buggered it, but I still had a fight and fucked it up more. I'm pretty close to the sun now. I can feel it. I'm going to transmit this now, before it's too late.
Transmission from suit.log to Sol Station. Searching for Sol Station signal.
Good. I want the last moments of my life to be used for good, so CESE knows what happened, and that I haven't just fucked up and going to die and no one knows why.
CO2 level 1%. Updated 2%. O2 tank 5% remaining. N2 tank 4% remaining.
I'm starting to feel sleepy, I think. The CO2's getting high. I think humans pass out at 4%? Anyway, let's stop thinking about the inevitable. And,
16:38. (16:42). CO2 level 3%. O2 tank 10.5% remaining. N2 tank 5% remaining. Backfill terminated. N2 below 5%. Emergency oxygen backfill engaged. Heat alarm. Suit 97 degrees centigrade. 16:44.
Shit. I must have fallen asleep. Crap. It's really fucking hot. Mum and Dad, this is the last time you will ever hear my voice. And I want to say that I love you. I hope I made you proud. Alex, my love, I love you so much with all my heart, and I'm sorry to leave you like this, and I hope you and Doug, the besties, even without me, were still a family, and I love you and all, but I want to see the sun.
$16.45. Medical alert. Astronaut PS back unresponsive. Heart rate 145 BPM. Overheat detected. Heat 199 degrees centigrade. Suit auto shutdown. Starting 2% complete. $16.58. Transmission sent. Medical alert. Astronaut PS back unresponsive 0 BPM. Duration less than 5 minutes. Astronaut PS back. Life status deceased. $17.03. Severe heat damage. Heat error above 400 degrees centigrade. $17.05. Suit and audio log transmission fail 0% sent. Shutdown complete. Goodbye, Solaris Station.
In any city, in any country, go to any mental institution or halfway house you can get yourself to. When you reach the front desk, ask with no hesitation to visit someone who calls himself the Holder of Darkness. The worker will mock you, but you have to stay as calm as possible. Keep asking him until he stops denying and withdraws from his counter to guide you through the corridors. As his behaviour changes radically, stay on guard, for if you start hearing one single tiny sinister hiss, you should turn around and flee as far as you can, covering your ears, because the time was bad. If you do not escape in time, the faint sound will turn into a dreadful growling that will soon merge into a continuous shriek of sheer pain until madness floods you and leaves you to die in deafening agony. If the warden remains silent, he will lead you to a closed door with neither handles nor lock. As he pushes it open effortlessly, you will see an ascending, winding staircase, which can't possibly lead to any upper floor of the establishment. The door will close behind you, and you will not be able to push it back. Past this point, climb and do not turn back. or you will fall into a bottomless pit waiting for living prey to chew upon. Do not count the steps, for knowing how many there are will drive you to insanity. One will then creak, and at that point you should stop. Another door should appear on your left. If it is on your right, then pray for a swift passing. Enter slowly into the room, and a blinding, obscuring darkness shall descend upon you. You will be required to walk straight forward, for straying even slightly will lead you to be devoured by the roaming and unknown creatures observing you with blinded and purulent eyes. You will know you have arrived when coldness grips you. At that very moment, freeze, or you will die by the hands of the holder who is standing right in front of you. In complete darkness, even closing your eyes will not prevent you from his horrid appearance. It will form into your mind as the most outrageous monster ever conceived, and madness will try to creep into your brain as worms over a decayed corpse. His fulminating breath and constant mumbling would be enough to make you cry, but be advised not to utter anything louder than a weeping, or you might wake what must not be awakened. The only question you will be able to whisper without being torn apart will be, what do they fear? You will feel movements all around you as shudders animate your opponents. You will hear what nameless and incurable diseases will strike the world if they were to be frightened, the countless terrors their own fright will unleash on those with a weaker mind than theirs. Amidst the atrocious enumeration of the endless sores the world will suffer, you might hear the simplest, almost ridiculous, yet implicable and certain truth they all fear. Do not move again. When your head is about to implode, it will stop. If you are still able to move, you will find a door in front of you which leads you outside of the ward. There, in the open, in the grass, a broken hourglass will wait for you. You are free to pick it up. It is object 13 of 538. Your knowledge of their fears is up to you to share, but you may not want to use it as a weapon against them.
It was a quiet Friday evening, and 8-year-old Sarah had just returned from school. Elated by the lack of homework for that weekend, she wasted no time in pulling out her half-finished art project, a small wooden cottage made up of ice cream sticks, from under her bed. There was a lot of cutting to be done though, and despite having been told not to use the penknife without parental supervision, she quickly took it from her father's work desk and proceeded to trim the edges of the ice cream sticks. Due to the lack of experience in using a penknife, it quickly slipped from her grip and left a huge, bloody gash on her left arm. "Daddy, Daddy!" Sarah's voice rang out from her second-floor bedroom. "I hurt my arm! It's bleeding really badly!" Sarah's cries of pain were the first thing Carl heard as he entered through the front door. As he drew in a breath to yell out a call of reassurance, a figure outside the window caught his eye. It was a man, holding a large rake, and he was heading right towards the back door of the house. Ignoring the panic welling up in his body, Carl quickly closed the front door quietly and hurried towards the kitchen, which was where the back door was located. Taking great care not to make any noise, he pulled a knife from its holder and positioned himself right next to the doorway. "Don't worry, baby. Don't worry. I'll protect you." Carl felt his heart rate quicken and his palms sweat as the footsteps outside drew closer. "Don't worry, baby. Daddy'll protect you." The door finally swung open and Carl sprang into action. Clamping his free hand over the intruder's mouth, he slammed his foot at the backs of the intruder's legs. As the intruder toppled over to his knees, Carl quickly seized the chance and swung the knife down onto the intruder's neck, slicing the neck wide open from ear to ear. Panting heavily from adrenaline and exhaustion, Carl pushed away the lifeless, blood-soaked body in disgust. The once pristine walls were now splattered with blood that pooled all around his feet. "Daddy! What's all that noise? What's going on?" Sarah's yells had increased in panic levels at the noise made during the fight. Sighing softly, Carl stepped away from the blood puddles and hurried towards the stairs. "Hold on, baby. I'm coming." "Daddy! Daddy!" Sarah's voice had evolved into a loud shrill of panic and fear. "Hold on, baby. Daddy's coming." As Carl emerged onto the landing, he pushed open the half-open door to Sarah's room. "Hey, baby." "How many times have I told you not to call me that?" Sarah groaned as she swung her wheelchair towards the door. "What took you so—" She froze in mid-sentence as she finally turned towards Carl. Her irritation quickly dissipated, and in its place was pure fear. Who are you?" she whispered in horror. A small grin crept over Carl's face as he stepped into the bedroom, brandishing the bloody knife by his side. Daddy's home.